The final shovel of earth had barely settled over her husband's resting place, the cold, damp soil a brutal finality to decades of shared warmth, when the hand once cradled in her own with such tenderness rose in a searing arc. The slap echoed not just across Eleanor's cheek, leaving a crimson sting that blossomed like a venomous bruise, but reverberated through the hollow chambers of her soul, across 60 years of unspoken sacrifice. The sound, a sharp concussive crack in the hushed aftermath of the graveside ceremony at the Grand Blackwood estate, seemed to suck the very air from her lungs. "This isn't your home anymore," her son-in-law Vincent snarled, his voice a venomous whisper that barely carried beyond the three of them standing on the manicured lawn. His eyes that once held a chilling emptiness, now filled with a cruel triumph, utterly devoid of recognition, utterly devoid of humanity. "Disappear." The words, razor-sharp, sliced through the thin veneer of composure she had meticulously maintained through the grueling funeral, through the past few agonizing years of silently watching her beloved Arthur wither away from an insidious, creeping illness. His final breath had been a whisper of her name, a fragile sigh that left her anchorless, adrift in a world suddenly devoid of his steady presence. And now, this. Betrayal, raw and agonizing, surged through her, a bitter tide threatening to drown the last vestiges of her strength. She felt it, a visceral clenching in her gut, a burning behind her eyes that stubbornly refused to spill tears. She had poured her very essence into this family, into this young man, nurturing him, supporting him through countless childhood scrapes, through rebellious teenage years, through university tuition and job searches, building him up, sacrificing her own dreams, her own comfort, asking for nothing in return but the quiet acknowledgement of her love, a reciprocal warmth she now realized had never truly existed. But gratitude, it seemed, was a currency long devalued, if it had ever held any worth at all in their eyes. Her daughter, Clara, a woman whose delicate features and perfectly coiffed blonde hair belied a core of granite and a calculating mind, watched from the doorway of the grand house, a ghost of a smile, cold and triumphant, playing on her carefully painted lips. From the moment Clara had walked through the threshold of what was Eleanor's home, the home she and Arthur had built from the ground up, brick by painstaking brick, over 50 years ago, Clara had systematically, relentlessly claimed ownership of every space, every memory, every cherished artifact. She had subtly, then overtly, relegated Eleanor to a mere phantom, a temporary guest, an inconvenient shadow in her own life, in her own sanctuary. The very air in the hallway crackled with an unspoken triumph, an electric current of malevolence that left her reeling, yet oddly, strangely, awakened. A flicker of something deep within her ignited, a chilling calm born not of resignation but of an ancient simmering resilience descended upon her. It was the quietude of a predator, long dormant, now stirring. The world, so recently a blur of grief and shock, sharpened into an almost painful clarity. Every object, every scent, every sound in that house she had called home for decades, registered with a newfound intensity. The scent of stale potpourri Clara insisted on, cloying and artificial. The faint echo of Arthur's laughter from a distant memory, now just a whisper. Without a word, without a tremor in her hands that still tingled from the impact, she walked past them, past the son-in-law who had just struck her, past the daughter whose gaze held a victorious gleam, and up the familiar stairs that now felt alien, each creaking step a betrayal of its own, a mournful lament for what once was. Her bedroom, once a haven of shared dreams and intimate whispers, felt like a museum of a life that no longer belonged to her, dusty with the ghosts of happiness. A small, well-worn suitcase was pulled from the back of the closet, its faded leather a testament to travels long past, to adventures she and Arthur had promised themselves more of. She packed with an almost surgical precision, her movements economical, devoid of overt emotion. A few changes of clothes, practical and unassuming, chosen for their anonymity. Her worn, leather-bound journal filled with private thoughts and observations, a cherished, sepia-toned photograph of Arthur, young and vibrant, his arms slung around her, both smiling into a future they had painstakingly built, a future that now seemed a cruel mirage. And perhaps, though she wouldn't admit it, the last vestiges of her broken heart, carefully tucked away where no one else could see, hoping the darkness of the suitcase would conceal its fragile vulnerability. The only thing she intentionally left behind were the stack of meticulously organized property deeds, neatly placed on the polished mahogany table in the living room. A silent, potent declaration that she refused to utter aloud, a hidden riddle for them to solve. And her dignity, which, though wounded and bruised, remained defiantly intact, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. It was a dignity built on years of quiet strength, of enduring hardship, of living with integrity. The night swallowed her whole, a merciful, inky blackness that promised anonymity, promised oblivion. She drove without conscious thought, the hum of the old sedan Arthur had insisted she keep a comforting drone against the pounding in her head, the chill seeping into her bones, until the flickering neon sign of a nameless motel appeared through the rain-streaked windshield. It was a place of transient souls, of fleeting stops, and in that moment it was her sanctuary, a sterile, anonymous box that offered a momentary reprieve from the crushing weight of her reality. The air inside was thick with the scent of disinfectant and stale cigarette smoke, but to her, it was the sweet perfume of freedom. The kind-faced receptionist, a woman whose weary eyes seemed to have witnessed countless silent tragedies, whose own life seemed etched with unseen struggles, offered a sympathetic gaze, a soft murmured, "Are you all right, dear?" The words were simple, yet they carried a depth of genuine concern that almost broke the dam holding back her tears. But the silent, profound grief etched on the woman's face, the quiet dignity in her solitude, the almost imperceptible tremor in her hands as she signed the ledger with a steady hand, spoke volumes far beyond any words she could utter. The receptionist handed her a key, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of her own unspoken empathy, a small gesture of kindness that felt like an ocean of understanding. Sleep offered no solace. The motel room, despite its anonymity, became a crucible for introspection. Her mind, a relentless projector, replayed a lifetime, vivid scenes flickering across the backs of her eyelids with an almost unbearable clarity. She saw the tireless hours spent building this very home, brick by painstaking brick, through blistering summers and biting winters, her hands blistered, her back aching, but her heart full of dreams. She recalled the relentless grind of mortgage payments that had shadowed every paycheck for over 4 decades, the endless nurturing of Clara from infancy to adulthood, a devotion so complete it had bordered on the erasure of self, a quiet sacrifice for his future. They saw a meek, aging woman. They saw someone easily dismissed, a relic of a bygone era, someone whose utility had expired. But they had failed to see the architect behind the facade, the silent engine that had powered their lives, the financial strategist who had meticulously managed their resources, the unwavering force that had kept their family afloat through lean years. Tucked away in a small, unassuming safety deposit box, at the very bottom beneath old insurance policies and her grandmother's forgotten jewelry, were the meticulously preserved documents, irrefutable proof, a legal fortress, that she was not just a co-owner, but a co-signer on the very mortgage that kept the roof over their heads, that entitled her to every single square inch of the property. It was her name, bold and clear, next to Arthur's. Her late husband, Arthur, a man of profound foresight and unwavering, boundless love, had possessed a chilling prescience, a profound understanding of his daughter's underlying ambition and Vincent's corrosive, avaricious influence. He had seen this day coming, a dark premonition of his own child's potential cruelty, a fear he had sometimes whispered to her in the dead of night. With a quiet, meticulous precision known only to him and their trusted lawyer, Mr. Albright, he had subtly, discreetly woven a legal tapestry of protection, a fail-safe designed to activate if Clara ever dared to betray her, to cast her aside like so much refuse, to deny her rightful place. Arthur had understood the true nature of their daughter, a cold pragmatism hidden beneath a veneer of charm, a lesson she was now learning firsthand in the most brutal and unforgiving way imaginable. The first rays of dawn, filtering weakly through the motel room's flimsy curtains, painting the worn carpet in stripes of pale yellow, brought not despair, but a quiet, formidable resolve. It was the calm before the storm, a chilling stillness that belied the earthquake about to unfold beneath their feet. She had always been a woman of action, even if those actions were often unseen, behind the scenes, powering the family. Now, her actions would be felt. A single phone call, made from the chipped plastic phone by the bedside, shattered their illusion of unchallenged dominion. With a calm, unwavering voice, a voice that surprised even herself with its newfound strength, a strength forged in the fire of injustice, she instructed the bank to halt all mortgage payments, revealing, with understated power, her undeniable legal connection to the property they believed was solely theirs. The bank representative, a young woman named Lily, initially confused by the unusual request, quickly grasped the gravity of the situation as she recited account numbers and legal clauses with precise clarity, her words cutting through the early morning silence like a sharpened blade. Lily's tone shifted from routine query to one of professional concern, recognizing the weight of what was being said. Within hours, the familiar click of new locks echoed through the house she had just left, a series of dull thuds that were, to her, a symphony of reclamation, an unseen hand asserting its absolute authority, its undeniable ownership. Vincent and Clara, basking in their presumed victory, perhaps already planning their lavish redecorations, would soon discover the true meaning of ownership, the true cost of their cruelty. By the end of the week, a stark, unforgiving notice from the bank, emblazoned with official seals and dire warnings, would land on Clara's doorstep, a cold, official declaration of mortgage breach, a prelude to the unraveling of their complacent, carefully constructed world. It was a quiet act, yet its repercussions would shake their world to its foundations. Her gaze drifted, not to the bleak motel room, but to the ghosts of a cherished past, to the vibrant memories of a life meticulously built. She saw the young couple they once were, Arthur and her, standing on an empty plot of land in the early 1960s, sun-kissed and hopeful, dreaming of a future, of children, of laughter filling rooms that didn't yet exist. She remembered the first mortgage payment in 1965, a monumental sum that felt like a lifetime's earnings, yet paid with a shared excitement for their burgeoning family, a testament to their youthful optimism. The countless sacrifices made to ensure the dream of this home never faltered, each extra shift she took at the local textile mill, each carefully budgeted penny meticulously set aside, a testament to their unwavering commitment. Through economic downturns that threatened to swallow them whole, through Arthur's prolonged illness that drained their resources and their spirits, she had been the silent, unwavering force, the bedrock upon which their lives were built, the tireless guardian of their shared dream. She was the one who managed the bills, who oversaw the endless repairs, who painted the walls in comforting shades, who nurtured the sprawling garden until it bloomed with vibrant life, who made the house a home, not just a structure of wood and brick. Yet Vincent and Clara, in their profound arrogance, blinded by greed and a sense of entitlement, had systematically erased her contributions, meticulously rewriting the family history to cast themselves as the rightful inheritors, the sole proprietors of this domain, dismissing her as a mere caretaker who had simply occupied space, a relic to be discarded. They had moved in after Arthur's illness worsened, slowly, subtly, like encroaching vines, taking over every aspect of their lives, asserting their presence, until her own identity in her own home had simply faded, becoming translucent. The whispers of Clara's friends overheard during late-night visits, about the old woman needing to move on, had always stung, but now they ignited a fire. A meeting was convened, not of reconciliation, but of a quiet, inevitable reckoning. The invitations, discreetly sent by Mr. Albright's office, simply stated a necessity to discuss final estate matters. With the formidable assistance of her late husband's lawyer, Mr. Albright, a man whose stern demeanor hid a sharp mind, decades of legal wisdom, and a deep loyalty to his longtime client Arthur, she initiated the activation of a critical legal clause, a hidden weapon within the will that Arthur had meticulously updated just months before his passing. This clause, meticulously crafted with chilling foresight and an almost prophetic understanding of his daughter's character, stipulated that any act of abuse or forced eviction against her would instantly strip Clara of all inheritance rights, reducing his presumed legacy to ashes, leaving him with nothing. The night of the slap had been recorded. Every cruel word, every sickening sound of the impact, every stifled gasp, every whispered threat from Clara, every condescending remark from Vincent, preserved with chilling clarity on a small, discreet voice recorder she had carried since Arthur's health began to subtly fail, a habit he had insisted upon for future reference, as his own memory occasionally wavered. "Just in case, my love," he had murmured, a prescient fear in his eyes. Mr. Albright, his expression grim and unreadable, reviewed the audio, listening intently, his jaw tightening with each passing second, and then confirmed the ironclad validity of the clause, its language precise and unequivocal, leaving no room for doubt or legal maneuvering. She was no longer a victim. She was a strategist, a chess master moving the pieces into place with cold precision, meticulously preparing to reclaim her life, armed with the undeniable force of the law and a newfound steel-hard resolve. The raw pain of the betrayal had sharpened her mind, stripped away the last layers of her quiet acquiescence, revealing the formidable woman who had always existed beneath the surface, waiting for her moment to emerge. The family gathered, a tense silence hanging heavy in the opulent, inherited living room, the grand chandelier sparkling overhead, a stark contrast to the darkness about to be unveiled. Clara and Vincent sat stiffly on the heirloom sofa Arthur had adored, their faces a mixture of smugness and ill-disguised impatience, a thin veil over their certainty of imminent victory. They believed this meeting was a mere formality, a rubber stamp on their new reign. Unaware of the impending storm about to break over their heads, other relatives, distant cousins, Arthur's remaining siblings, a few bewildered nieces and nephews, shifted uncomfortably, sensing the palpable tension that permeated the air. She sat, composed and still, in a single armchair opposite them, her gaze steady, almost serene, a stark contrast to the coiled fury and steely determination within her. Mr. Albright, standing by the fireplace, began to speak, his voice calm yet authoritative, laying bare the legal updates concerning Arthur's estate, details that slowly began to chip away at Clara and Vincent's smug expressions, replacing them with a growing unease. Then, without fanfare, he reached into his briefcase. He retrieved a small, unassuming device. He pressed play. The recording filled the room. Vincent's venomous words, "This isn't your home anymore. Disappear," echoing with a chilling clarity that seemed to strip the paint from the walls, the sharp, sickening sound of the slap, the raw pain in her stifled gasp, Clara's cold, triumphant chuckle, a sound that made several relatives recoil. The audio, a brutal, unvarnished truth, pierced the silence, exposing the ugliness they had so carelessly unleashed, the cruelty they had reveled in behind closed doors. As the audio faded, leaving an almost tangible void, a suffocating silence, Mr. Albright's voice cut through the stillness, cool and precise as he revealed the devastating legal clause, its implications sinking in with a horrifying, palpable finality. Clara's inheritance, once her birthright, a fortune he had already begun to spend in her mind, the very foundation of his privileged future, was now null and void, an empty promise dissolving into dust. Her name, once synonymous with heir, was now stripped of its power. Gasps rippled through the room, Clara's carefully constructed facade shattered, her face blanching to an ashen white, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. Vincent's jaw went slack, his eyes wide with a dawning horror, a realization that his world had just irrevocably crumbled. He looked at his mother-in-law, then at Clara, then back at Eleanor, a silent plea in his eyes that she refused to acknowledge. The narrator's silence, now imbued with the crushing weight of revelation, thundered louder than any accusation, any protest she could have ever uttered. It was the silence of a woman who had found her voice, not through shouting or accusation, but through irrefutable, devastating truth, delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Reality, a brutal, unforgiving wave, crashed down on Vincent. The arrogant swagger, the entitled posture drained from his face, replaced by a desperate, panicked plea that seemed to age him 20 years in an instant. He lunged forward from the sofa, then hesitated, his eyes darting frantically between Eleanor and Mr. Albright, searching for an escape, a loophole, any sign of weakness. "Eleanor," he choked out, his voice hoarse, raw with terror. "Eleanor, please." I didn't mean it. It was just the stress, the funeral, the grief. You know how I get. Please forgive me. Please, just reinstate the mortgage payments. Let me take over. I can make it right, I swear. We can live here together like a family. I'll change, I promise. His words were a torrent of desperate promises, of pleas for a mercy he had shown none, a frantic attempt to repair the irreparable. He was no longer the arrogant, entitled son-in-law, but a terrified boy facing the complete demolition of his imagined future, a future built on stolen inheritance. Clara, beside him, remained frozen, her eyes wide, staring blankly ahead, her carefully crafted world dissolving around her. Eleanor's voice, when it finally came, was steady, devoid of anger, devoid of hatred, yet firm as granite, utterly unyielding. "I forgive you, Vincent," she said, her eyes unwavering, holding his gaze until he flinched, unable to meet the clarity in her gaze. "But I will not fix this for you." The simple, declarative sentence hung in the air, a final, unshakable boundary, a chasm she refused to bridge. There was no anger, no vindictiveness in her tone, only an absolute clarity, a profound sense of self-possession she had never fully realized she possessed. She acknowledged, not just to him, but to herself, to every corner of her being, that she was no longer the silent woman who had been invisible in her own life, whose needs and sacrifices had been systematically overlooked and erased. That woman was gone, replaced by someone forged in the crucible of betrayal, tempered by her own quiet strength, ready to claim her own destiny. The house, once a symbol of their shared life, then of their profound betrayal, was now sold. The meticulous legal process, overseen with quiet efficiency by Mr. Albright, ensured a clean, swift transaction, devoid of further emotional theatrics. The substantial proceeds, far from lining her own pockets or being hoarded for personal comfort, were channeled directly to the Elder Dignity Alliance, a testament to her liberation, a concrete act of altruism that transcended personal pain, transforming her loss into a legacy of hope for others. It was a final, emphatic statement that her life was not about accumulation, but about meaning, about justice, about empowering the vulnerable. She walked away, not in defeat, not with bitterness clinging to her soul, but in quiet triumph, leaving behind the suffocating pain of being erased, of being dismissed, of being brutalized by her own daughter and son-in-law. Her journey, a deliberate pilgrimage of healing and rediscovery, led her thousands of miles away to a small, secluded cottage nestled by a pristine, crystalline lake in the heart of the Canadian Rockies. Here, amidst the vast, untamed wilderness, where the air was crisp with the scent of pine and wild berries, and the silence was broken only by the mournful call of loons, the distant howl of wolves, or the gentle lapping of water against the shore, she found a profound and unexpected peace. It was a freedom from the emotional turmoil, from the insidious control, from the suffocating expectations of a past that had almost consumed her, a past now safely, irrevocably behind her. In her new home, a sanctuary built of rough-hewn timber and panoramic windows gazing out onto the shimmering lake, reflecting the majestic mountains that cradled it, she awoke each morning not with the familiar ache of sorrow or the phantom sting of a slap, but with a burgeoning sense of boundless freedom and renewed purpose. The cold mountain air, crisp and clean, filled her lungs, invigorating her. Solitude, once a feared companion that had whispered loneliness in her ear, became a source of profound connection, a communion with nature, with the deepest, truest parts of herself she had long neglected. She spent her days walking the silent, snow-dusted trails, fishing in the glassy, ice-cold lake, her hands no longer trembling, reading by the crackling fireplace as blizzards raged outside, and simply being. She gardened in the short, intense summer, planting hardy wildflowers that burst forth with unexpected color, mirroring her own late-blooming strength. She taught herself to carve wood, transforming simple blocks into intricate figures of animals and birds, each cut a meditative act. She had lost a house, yes, a physical structure that had housed so much pain and so many illusions. But she had gained an immeasurable wealth, truth, clarity, and the indomitable power to reclaim her life, her voice, her very essence. From this tranquil sanctuary, far from the judging eyes of society and the clamor of a life unchosen, she began to record her story, not for revenge, not for personal gain, but for resonance. She shared it, quietly at first, through online forums dedicated to elder abuse and women's empowerment, then with increasing confidence, through small, intimate virtual gatherings, connecting with women across the globe who had faced similar struggles, the invisible mothers, the dismissed wives, the undervalued women whose voices had been silenced by circumstance or cruelty. She guided them, empowered them to find their own voices, to break free from their own silences, to understand that their worth was not defined by the expectations or dismissals of others, but by the quiet, formidable strength that resided within them, waiting to be unearthed. Her final message, articulated in a voice now clear and resonant, imbued with the wisdom of experience and the peace of a soul finally at rest, resonated with a quiet, yet formidable power that transcended her own personal narrative. Silence isn't weakness. It is often the profound, unyielding preparation for something infinitely stronger. It is the time when seeds of resilience take root, when clarity emerges from chaos, and when the quiet strength of the spirit gathers its formidable, undeniable power. She extended an invitation, a beacon of hope to all who would listen, her words echoing across digital spaces, reaching hearts far and wide, touching lives she would never personally meet. Find your voice. Your story matters. You are not alone. It was a testament to the enduring human spirit, a promise that even in the deepest betrayal, the quiet strength of a woman's heart could not only survive, but thrive, becoming a guiding light for others. Her journey, a solitary path from a shattered past to a peaceful present, transformed by an act of ultimate self-reclamation, became a universal anthem of resilience, a quiet revolution of the soul. The silence, once a burden, had become her loudest, most profound declaration, a testament to a life finally lived on her own terms, a legacy of strength whispered across the wild open spaces of the Canadian Rockies, finding echoes in the hearts of women everywhere.